Constitution Day, a day to discuss the freedoms and liberties embraced within the United States Constitution. For tonight's forum, our panel will discuss the 2020 presidential election and the role that student clubs will play on campus. Join us live now from the campus of Sacred Heart University with your host and chair of the Department of Government, Professor Gary Rose.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here this evening and to host what is going to be, I think, a very interesting panel discussion. We celebrate Constitution Day at Sacred Heart University on September 17th, and people might ask, why September 17th? Well, that is the day that the Founding Fathers finished their work on writing the Constitution and then sent the Constitution out to the states for ratification. It's a magnificent document. It's the oldest Constitution in the world. And we've had a variety of forums here where we've explored and examined different constitutional issues. For this year, however, because of the ongoing presidential contest, which many of our students are interested in and certainly intend to vote in, we thought it would be appropriate to discuss the presidential election with a panel of very distinguished students who represent the political clubs on campus. So let me just introduce to you who our panelists are this evening. First of all, we have Ms. Colby Driscoll, who is the president of the College Democrats. Colby, good evening.
Good evening, thank you. Yes, my name is Colby Driscoll. I am a senior political science major here, and I am the president of College Democrats, and will be representing our club tonight.
Thank you, Colby.
Thank you.
Representing the College Republicans, we have the president of that club, Mr. Matteo Menta.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. I am Matteo Menta. I am a junior political science major, and I am the president of the Sacred Heart College Republicans.
Thank you, Matteo. And we have a relatively new club on campus. It was formed just last year. This is a nonpartisan political club, and there is such a thing, by the way. And this club is devoted to getting students from both the left, the right, the center, from all political persuasions involved in politics. And representing that club is the president of Pioneer Vote. That is the name of the club now. That is Mr. Carlos Ruiz.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carlos. I'm a senior marketing major. And yes, I am the president of Pioneer Vote, and I'm super excited to be here.
Thank you to all three of you. And I think we're in for a very, very spirited and informative discussion. And I do want to say that we have a chat box, and students are free to send questions in. And once we get through our panel discussion, we certainly will open up this forum to the questions from the student body or whomever is sending in these questions. But we're going to start this evening with the president of Pioneer Vote, and that's Carlos. Carlos, what is Pioneer Vote, and what is it doing these days on our campus to mobilize student political participation?
Yes, so Pioneer Vote actually started back in May at the end of my sophomore year here at Sacred Heart, and it was designed to raise awareness for students about politics and about the importance of voting and why our vote does matter. During the fall and the work leading up to that in the summer months, we really drived me, Meredith Kennedy, who is the other student, she since now has graduated. We focused on developing ways on how we can include the student body, Greek life, athletics, and all students to know why voting is so important. Now, we have transitioned to be a club here on campus, which does allow for a lot more members and more student population to be able to be a part of the club. But some of the initiatives that we're doing this year, which is super exciting, is that our athletics conference, the Northeast Conference, have actually designed their very own voting initiative, which was NEC Votes. Pioneer Vote and athletics will be working together on registering the student bodies that's within athletics. We've also had the opportunity of getting to work with the library to be able to pass out some very important information about voting and continue to reach out to students through registration drives and be able to ensure that all students are ready to vote this November.
Thank you, Carlos. Let's turn to Colby for a moment here. Colby, what is the Democratic Club about on our campus? And as the president of College Democrats, what are you doing to stimulate political interest in this year's campaign?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for a very nice first question. So, kind of like Pioneer Vote, College Democrats is also a fairly new club on campus. We were formed about 2.5 years ago during my sophomore year. And we welcome people of like-minded, ideologies and thoughts up, in the Democratic political side here. And, we host meetings on Mondays at 6 p.m. now via Zoom. And, we get together, we try to have a lot of community outreach and engaging with different, political campaigns and different things happening politically around the Sacred Heart area. We're all about inclusivity, and it's a very open and accepting meeting space for people to, share their ideas, ask questions, have discussions. That's one of the biggest things that we do at our meetings. We host a weekly discussion where we pick a topic and everyone gets to say what they're feeling, their questions, and we have a nice conversation and dialogue in that regard.
Oh, thank you, Colby.
Thank you.
Mateo, tell us a little bit about the Republican Club on Sacred Heart's campus, and what is the Republican Club doing under your leadership to mobilize student participation?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one really important. Firstly, I just want to say, one of the things people forget most in an election year is that there are other elections besides the presidential one. There's something outside of Washington, D.C. So a lot of our volunteer efforts in the community in regards to campaigns are going to be focused on helping out local leaders and those who would want to be local leaders get into power and make decisions so that they can help their community. And that is really important to us, as they often get blindsided every 4 years when it comes up between to the big race. So we want to make sure that we can help on our local CT level as well. And in terms of what we do in the club besides that, we are really focused on action. We love to talk about our views. We think it's very important. We love to have debates with the College Democrats. But we are very much focused on putting our ideas into action. So that's why we are focused on figuring out ways to volunteer in the community. Even with the COVID pandemic going on, we're going to work with some local charities and honestly just trying to create an atmosphere on campus where we can have these conversations, have these ideas, but also showing why we're proud to have them. And that's really what College Republicans is all about.
Let me just ask a question here before we go to the next item of interest here. When we look at national politics these days, we see Democrats and Republicans not really communicating with one another. There's a great deal of animosity. Prior to this forum, we spoke about the gridlock in Washington, D.C. How do the two clubs, can I ask, how do the two clubs on campus interact with one another? And Colby, why don't you take that?
Yeah, definitely. So as Mateo touched on just a few seconds ago, we try to facilitate and organize debates between our two clubs, and that really, gets us involved with each other. We get to know each other, and we also get to, have those structured debates to understand where everyone's coming from. So that is, a big part of what we do. Mm-hmm. And then, just general, education and respect and understanding for each other. I mean, speaking personally, Mateo and I are friends. We're able to have conversations. We're able to talk about our beliefs and everything like that. And, as the leaders of the club, we really try to foster that understanding, that respect, and that, knowledge of the other side. We can talk about our beliefs all day long, but at the end of the day, to work collectively in one cohesive unit, we have to really be understanding of everyone's views collectively.
Would you like to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. I think stretching off what Colby has said, there are really two choices you have if you want to engage in politics. Two types of attitudes. There's the first attitude, which is by far the easiest, and that is to treat yourself like you are on a pedestal, like your ideas are pure and good and nothing wrong with them. And I think that's where a lot of the problems in our country come from, is that everyone takes the easy option. It is much harder to look at your own faults and look at your own flaws in terms of your ideas and work towards creating a better solution and working to create relationships. And that is what we, at least the Republicans, at the first meeting of every year, the E-Board makes that very clear, that we don't tolerate people just brashly talking about their views and trying to enforce them on others, that we will advocate for our views strongly, and we will stand by them and draw the line in the sand when we see fit. But we will never, never try to bully someone. And I think that's a sentiment that Colby shares.
Seems to be. Thank you. I'd like to discuss now the interest on campus, and I think I'll start with Carlos on this. Carlos, how would you gauge the political interest of the Sacred Heart student body in the 2020 presidential election contest? Do we have a lot of interest out there among the student body?
I do believe so. I believe that the student body really are very vocal. We've noticed over the past few months that many students have been very vocal about their views of what's currently going on in our country. And it's so easy to do that by sharing it through our social media platforms. So there is conversation going, and that's why I believe many students know that the election is definitely the outlet of possible change in this country. And hopefully, for whatever reason it is that they believe is best fit, there is interest. Though I could also understand that some of students may feel a little bit unsure just because diving into politics for some can sometimes be a little messy, or they believe that they're not ready just yet. But that's why we're here, essentially, to be able to educate students to vote and the importance of that and why their vote matters.
Now, I understand, Carlos, that there will be a registration drive possibly forthcoming. Is that correct? Can you tell us a little bit about maybe what you have in mind I think we talked about the Cabana time?
Yes. So in the past, we did do registration drives. We've been very successful with that. Last year, we were able to register over 1,000 students, and we had at least 600 students go vote out in the polls, whether it was in Bridgeport or Fairfield. Though this year, we plan to do the same thing with Cabana Times within our own organization as well, teaming up with athletics to be able to have those own registration drives possibly outside of the Pitt Center. So there's a lot of activities for that to happen and to really get registered for this upcoming election.
Good. Mateo, what are the key issues on this campus among the student body? Do we find a student body that is interested in solving the pandemic, healthcare issues, law enforcement? What are the key issues that at least you feel, and from what you can gauge, among the student body, what are they talking about in this election?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think it's really important to see what our students are interested in nowadays. I think as we look forward in terms of how students are going to vote in this election, or at least what they're talking about in this election, I think it comes down to really two really main camps, and that is, I think social issues really matter a lot in terms of especially the Black Lives Matter, the protests surrounding it, and some of the controversies surrounding it, and then also just the pure characters of who our presidential candidates are. Those are really, I think, the two dividing debates on campus right now is, unfortunately, what you think of Joe Biden and what you think of Trump, and then do you stand with the protests, or some would say riots in the towns, and really what's your stance on them? And it can be fairly dividing, and you're stepping on eggshells a lot of the time, because with the wrong person, you could lead to an unproductive conversation or a productive conversation. So I would really say it's mainly law enforcement, however, and the character of our candidates.
Do you find students feel that they are free to express their political views?
I think so. I think students do feel free on the campus. I don't think they feel any threat from the faculty, if that's what you're implying. What I do say, though, is that while people are definitely interested and invested on this campus, I think the issue is that they're more afraid of what their peers are going to say. And that more than any force that an authoritarian like a faculty or the state or the government could apply, peer pressure and the not wanting to be the odd man out in your friend group, I think, is an even better inhibitor on opinions in college campuses.
Colby, what are you hearing among students in your club and in classrooms? What issues are on the minds of our students as we approach this election?
Yeah, definitely. I do agree with a lot of what Mateo was just saying in regard to that. Definitely, healthcare surrounding this pandemic and just in general, that's definitely a a big thing on everyone's mind, as it should be. And also, civil rights, social justice, inclusivity, things of that nature are definitely very important. On everyone's minds, the people, that I surround myself with, that's something that, it's an open conversation, a continuous conversation that we're having. And, definitely everything that Mateo was saying in terms of, reform within like law enforcement and everything like that definitely is a forefront because of, the current events that are happening in our country, within our state, all around, the country and everything like that. So definitely I would say, reform in that regard, social justice, that arena, and then also, healthcare in the pandemic.
Thank you. I'm going to ask this question of all three of you, and Carlos, I'll start with you. How do you think our students are leaning in terms of supporting either President Trump or former Vice President Joe Biden?
Wow, that is quite the question. Though I believe that a lot of people are for change in this country. I believe that it's super important that these conversations are going on and that we're understanding that people's voices need to be heard. Though I do think that just based off of what we registered last year, the campus does lean a little bit more Republican, which is perfectly fine. And that's something that we encourage for you to have that platform and that stance. So I do think that more students are leaning toward that way in for the election.
I think so. What's your read on the mood of the campus in terms of voting behavior, Colby?
Yeah, definitely. I think that we do have a very diverse population here at SHU in terms of political ideology and everything like that. We definitely have Republicans, we definitely have Democrats, and, personally, the people that I surround myself with, obviously the president of College Democrats, I see more of the liberal, the Democratic side. But then, as Carlos was saying, there are, Republicans here, conservatives, everything like that. And I would say, I don't really think that one has the upper hand, if that makes sense. I don't really see, a lot of polarization. Just in my personal experience, everyone is entitled to, think and interpret things the way they do. But I feel on the Sacred Hearts campus, everyone, no matter what their beliefs are able to, have those outlets to express themselves and, say what they're thinking and what they're feeling and everything like that. So I definitely think it's, it's a nice common ground.
Mateo, what about you? Which way do you think our campus is leaning?
So based on purely my experience and purely what I've seen among my classmates, among my peers, I would tend to agree with Carlos, actually. We are pretty much a very diverse campus, very, very mixed, almost evenly balanced. But if I had to say, it does seem that at the very least, the more vocal students, there have been more vocal Republicans on campus than I would say Democrats. That tends to be what has happened in the past, as far as I am aware, and that seems to be what is happening in the present. Although I would say it's not a massive, it's not some 70-30, 80-20 situation. It's neck and neck, basically.
You think so? Yeah. So while we're on the subject of voting behavior, let me just ask the presidents of the two clubs, then Carlos, I'll come to you too. You're a Republican.
Yes.
Why?
Why? That's a great question, and honestly, I think both parties nationwide are coming to a crux of these inner movements, their fight for their own identity on both sides. So I'll speak for the Republican piece, obviously. As a Republican, I think the reason why Republicans are Republican is because we trust that the values that form the foundation of this country will be strong enough to overcome any oppressor, any tyrannical legislation, and that ultimately enshrine the belief that our rights come from our own nature of being alive, and that our strength comes from working with each other. And as we go into another election year, as we go into another test of the American democracy, Republicans are going out to vote because they believe that their values and their rights are what keep us going forward. And these are not just Republican values. I'm talking about freedom, independence, civil liberty. Even though there was Jim Crow and terrible laws against minorities in this country. It was our values that pushed through and survived through it. We overcame that as a nation. We are freer now because of the ideas of freedom and independence that should be and are universal to all Americans. Those are the quintessential foundations of the Republican Party.
And are the values of our republic alive and well still?
I think they are. I think we are under a test, and I'm sure there's some partisan disagreement on what that test is and who's right and who's wrong in this regard. But our values have stood strong for more than 200 years. No matter whether it was a civil war where hundreds of thousands of Americans died, World War II, the Cold War, people have been putting tests against the American values since its inception. But still it survives. So yes, I have faith that we will survive again.
Colby, the Democratic Party in the United States is an older party compared to the Republican Party. In fact, it's the oldest political party in the world right now. And I know that the Democratic Party has changed over time in terms of its position. So today, 2020, heading into this election, what does it mean to be a Democrat?
Definitely. This is a question that, I think about constantly, and it's something that's always on my mind, something that I love to, constantly research and dive into and everything like that. And I think, definitely in the Democratic Party, on Sacred Heart's campus in Connecticut and in our nation in general, definitely inclusivity and diversity is of the forefront. And then also, change and being willing to, see something and want to take, action to change it, if that makes sense. So always finding new and better ways to handle situations and problems, being open to change, being open to new ideas and everything like that. I loved hearing Mateo talk. It's, Mateo is a very, very nice way of words, but I do believe that, changing, reevaluating and being open to changes is a really big part of the Democratic Party.
Now, the Democratic Party right now in American politics is characterized by two fairly distinct factions, a very moderate faction and a very, very progressive faction as well. Mm-hmm. Do you find that within your own club or not?
Definitely. In the Democratic Club, we do have some moderates, we do have some progressives, and I think that's the beauty of a political party. It's not. None of us are cookie cutter, if that makes sense. We're able to have our own ideas and to form our own opinions within our party ideology. That goes the same. I believe I can speak for Republicans on this side too. There's a spectrum within our parties, and I think that it is very reflective in the Democratic Party in terms of moderate, progressive, and everything like that. I feel like speaking for the Democratic Party, I think it is very reflective of that.
Yeah, Carlos, Pioneer Vote is really nonpartisan. It's all inclusive. It's about getting people to vote. But as the president of Pioneer Vote, how do you perceive the Republican Party and how do you perceive the Democratic Party today?
So there is, again, another very important question to ask. It's super important to know where, in recent conversations, the Democrats and the Republicans have taken their position. And so one may say that the Republicans are not as progressive as the Democrats, and that's something that, as mentioned by Mateo, they hold on very true to their values, as well as, as Colby mentioned, that the Democrats are always looking for a little bit to progress, though there is also that divider where there are a little bit more moderate Democrats and a little bit far more progressive Democrats within the party. So it depends on who you ask. But unfortunately, both parties will have negative connotations with the two, and that's just simply how the cookie crumbles, unfortunately. Being on one side or the other, there are going to be certain connotations and certain assumptions about your character that if you lean one way, then you're not for the people, and if you lean for the other way, then you're just doing it for the wrong reasons.
I'm sure there are quite a few students on our campus who are registered as voters, but they chose the independent column rather than join a political party. Why do you think that's the case?
I believe that's the case because, students are still trying to figure it out. And I think, again, it goes back to if you label yourself one way or if you label yourself the other, there are negative connotations with both of them. So I think it's easier to just stay in the middle and say, well, I'll hear it out. I'll see where to go. Though my advice has always been you can still register for one party and may not necessarily agree with the other with your party in itself. And even myself, I'm registered one way, but I voted the other in this past election for the local election. So, it's very possible that you can mix between the two.
Do you think a lot of students on campus, and this is a question for all three, but we'll start with you, Carlos, and work our way around. Do you think a lot of students are going to be participating in absentee ballots this year?
I'm not too sure, but I think it would be important to, because I know in some states that some of the students are coming from, their election, sometimes it can go very either or. So depending on their weight on their value and their vote, if they believe that their vote would really matter back in their hometown and really make a difference for whatever they believe in, then I believe that would be a smarter option.
Colby, what do you think? A lot of absentee ballot requests for those?
I kind of want to agree with Carlos on this. I feel like our students are going to, kind of assess the need and everything like that. I definitely encourage everyone to either be registered to vote, have an absentee ballot for your hometown, or if you choose to vote in Bridgeport, definitely that's something that I'm really encouraging. And I believe that we are going to have a strong turnout of voters on our college campus this year. I believe since, Pioneer Vote was established, Carlos, you guys have really done a great job pushing the importance and why we vote and why it matters and why we need participation from college kids, at a young age. Once you turn 18, you can start voting and, I encourage everyone, I'm sure Carlos, Mateo, Dr. Rose, everyone encourages voting participation. And I believe that we're going to have a nice turnout of voters, whether it is absentee for their hometown, their state, or down here for the local Bridgeport and Fairfield elections.
Thank you. And Mateo, what do you think? You think a lot of students are going to request absentee ballots, or as Colby suggests, maybe a good number of them will decide to register, on campus and vote in Bridgeport or Fairfield? What do you think?
Yeah, so I agree to an extent, I think is the best way to put it. College students typically, and younger people typically, do not come out in droves for elections. Even though if they did all vote, they would be a decisive factor in who we elected. That's simply not the case. However, I will say the efforts by Pioneer Vote last year, I saw with my own eyes. It was incredible. Hundreds of students coming out to vote because they knew the value. So maybe just something's in the water here at Sacred Heart, but I do think at the very least here, we are going to be the exception.
Okay, thank you. I think it's time now to turn to some questions that have come in. And may we have a reader on the various questions? I see there's a long list of questions. That's great. So apparently there's a lot of interest in this forum here.
One of the questions, Dr. Rose, is can an independent win the election? If yes, how many times has an independent won this president's election? Who are those people that were the independents and won the election?
Well, that question is directed to me. We've never elected an independent president, if that's what the question is. We've always elected a member of one of the two major parties, and it's either a Federalist or a Democratic Republican, and we've also elected Whigs, and there was a Whig party for a while, and when the Whig party died out, we've elected Republicans and Democrats ever since the 1850s. There, when the Republican Party was born in 1854, they ran their first presidential candidate in 1856. He lost. But then Abraham Lincoln won in 1860. It's always been one of the two major parties winning the presidential contest. So the point here is, if the question is suggesting that that maybe a third-party candidate could win the race, running as an independent or along those lines, the chances are I wouldn't hold my breath, because it's a two-party country, and even the large block of independent voters, one should know, lean to one of the two major parties. And actually, when you take the leaners out, the pure independents, it's only about 15% or so. It's very small. Most independents have partisan leanings. So, but the answer is we always elect, up to this point, and we will continue to do so, a member of a major party.
Another question, Dr. Rose. Do you think some people who are registered Republican are turning away from Trump because of how he has handled his last 4 years, especially this year?
That question should come to me, or would it be best to address that to the head of the college Republicans? Go ahead.
Yes. So just to restate, I believe the question was,
Do you think some people who are registered Republican are turning away from Trump because of how he has handled the last 4 years?
Yes. Okay. That's a really important question, especially right now, as we are basically less than 20 days away from people can vote by absentee ballot. November 3rd seems like a long way away, but people can actually vote much sooner than that due to absentee. Two things. Firstly, and people may disagree with me on this, but I think at the start of this year, before coronavirus started, I think there would have been a very strong chance that President Trump gets reelected. Almost, just very strong, I would say. Because he had a very strong economic record. America has not seen such an economic boom in a long time, especially since the recession. So I think it would have been very strong in January. Now, it's getting a little closer, and coronavirus has been a very large factor in that. So I think it has hurt his chances. But now, as it seems the public's concerns have actually shifted away from coronavirus in some capacity, then I think and because of the riots that are happening in many American cities, he is actually experiencing a resurgence in popularity. He is doing better than he was a few months ago. So I think this election is a lot more neck and neck than people make it out to be, and you'll see that on Election Day.
Okay, thank you. How about another question?
Tyler's asking for more clarification and a better explanation for what exactly an absentee ballot is.
Either one of you would like to answer that? That's fine. An absentee ballot. What is an absentee ballot? Who would like to answer that?
Yeah. So
Carlos, you want to go with that?
Yes. So an absentee ballot, it allows you, so if you're currently not at your hometown where you actually are living, so for example, if you're going to school in Bridgeport, but you still want to be able to vote wherever home is for you, you're able to request a absentee ballot from the registrar's office of your hometown and be able to participate in the election through that way. So that's something that you can sign up online through various websites that you can do that so, or be able to send it in by mail, which is a little bit of a lengthier process just because you would have to send it back in, or you can just go back home and be able to request an absentee ballot and be able to send that in so that your vote is counted for the election in your hometown and not necessarily right now in Fairfield or Bridgeport.
Can I throw a question in at this point before we move to the other questions? There will be millions of people this year who vote absentee, mail-in ballots and so forth. We have heard many, many times from President Trump that the large number of mail-in ballots lend themselves to fraud. Carlos, let me start with you on that. Do you think that that we're going to experience an election characterized by mass fraud?
Well, in my personal opinion, I think he's just a little bit worried because not all of his responses, in my opinion, have been the best. But I do believe that there is a possibility for that. But again, it's really unlikely for it to happen. I mean, you send in the vote and you can't really change it. You know?
Okay, thank you. Colby, what's your read on that?
Yeah, definitely. So I understand where President Trump could be coming from here in terms of saying, fraud. We haven't really experienced a time where we are going to have such a high volume of mail-in votings and absentee ballots and everything coming in. But at the same time, voter fraud can happen anywhere. People can mess with systems. They can, tamper with voting ballots on any platform, whether it's in person or via mail. So I definitely, I understand where he's coming from. Definitely something that he personally has never experienced. However, my answer is going to be that fraud can occur at any platform you choose to vote. So I don't believe it's as heightened of a threat as he's kind of playing it up to be.
Mateo, your thoughts?
Yes, this is one of the major Republican talking points right now is fraud in the election. People are saying, how are we going to know if it's a legitimate election? That's why this is such an important question. And I will say, you have to accept the outcome. Whatever it is, the outcome must be accepted if you want to have a continuation of our system. But I will say, in regard to Mr. Trump's comments about whether this is going to be a fraudulent election or not, I think fraud is obviously a risk that we have to care about, we have to confront. Again, no scale unlike any other seen before, the absentee ballots we are going to receive, the mail-in ballots we are going to receive. So all precautions must be taken. But I think the real enemy here isn't fraud, it's human error. What happens when someone accidentally misplaces a box or boxes that have votes in there? I think I heard in the primary election, people lost a small percentage of the votes, and they're like, okay, it's still like a 97% success rate. The issue is 3% of the votes across the country could amount to thousands and thousands of votes, which could, in districts where it really can flip and where those electoral votes matter, determine our election. I'm not sure if it's malice that will interfere with our process. I think it is genuine incompetence that threatens this.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn to another question from the listeners
There's
and
one about
watchers.
the Electoral College, Dr. Rose. It's a question to all of you. Who do we think will win the popular vote, and who do you think will win the Electoral College? Do you think whoever wins the Electoral College will take office?
What was the last part of the question? Whoever wins the electoral...
Whoever wins the Electoral College, will they take office?
Will they take office? Oh, well, constitutionally, they would, yes. Whoever wins the electoral vote, that's the way it works. But I think the premise of that question is, it goes back to 2016, is that could we, I don't want to reinterpret the question, but I think possibly it's suggested there might be a popular vote winner and an electoral college vote winner. And we do know that if you win the electoral vote, that's how it works to win the presidency. And it's happened not just with President Trump, but with some other presidents too. That's a very interesting question. And actually, in my presidency class, we did have a good discussion about this just yesterday. So, Mateo, real briefly, do you think it's possible that we're going to have once again a repeat of 2016 with an electoral college winner and one who has lost the popular vote?
Yeah, I think that if Joe Biden is the one to win the Electoral College, he will almost surely also win the popular vote. However, if it is Donald Trump who emerges the victor from this contest, he will almost undeniably lose the popular vote. He is really the strategy that the Trump campaign is employing is not trying to win the most popular votes because they realize at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What matters in order to win is to win the Electoral College. So they don't care about the popular vote, and they're not trying to win. They're trying to win the Electoral College.
Okay. Do you see that happening again, Colby?
I definitely do believe that is a very strong possibility in this presidential contest. As we saw in 2016, Hillary won the popular vote and then Trump won the Electoral College vote. I think it is definitely possible. I've been pondering this for as you guys are talking about this, and if this were to happen again, my assumption, being here September, everything could change down the line. However, the way that I'm seeing it is that I kind of envision Trump winning possibly winning the popular vote, and then Joe Biden maybe winning the Electoral College vote. But, definitely ask me again in a few months, and I'll have a better answer for you.
Carlos, could we have a repeat of 2016?
It's possible. Anything can happen. I mean, but the most important thing, it depends on where these candidates are winning. Something that I actually learned the other day, Ohio every single time that Ohio has gone to a Republican candidate, they have won the election. So Ohio, you have to vote one way or another. But not only that, we do have a lot of states where it's really a toss-up. Pennsylvania, Florida. These are states that are super important for either one of these campaigns. So again, it just depends on the strategy. Mateo already mentioned that the Trump campaign is more focused on the electoral vote, college vote, and at the end of the day, that's the most important. So we can vote as many times as we want for one or the other, but electoral college is who determines the winner.
Thank you. How about another question?
Well, there's a question about the college, Dr. Rose. What are the opinions of the panel on the Electoral College? Why does it still exist? And how is the Electoral College fair if a majority of America voted for another candidate?
Okay, sure. Who would like to take that first? All right, Colby.
All right, so definitely on the terms of the Electoral College, that is something that, really could have worked hundreds of years ago, with the inception of our country and everything like that. But I do believe that it is an outdated system. I really firmly believe in one person, one vote, and having, every citizen in America is given that freedom, that right, that privilege to vote. And I feel like, if we're going to offer that to the American people, then it should really be valued and taken seriously. And whoever the American people vote for, the majority win, I believe that should be reflected in office. So I definitely believe that the Electoral College is an outdated system, could have worked years ago, but now for our, moving progressively, as we were talking about before, definitely I believe it's outdated and that we really need to be focusing and valuing the one person, one vote and the popular vote of our country to really, be well represented.
Can I just ask you a question on this? One of the concerns is if it goes to a direct popular vote, you're going to have the East Coast and the West Coast, large population centers determining who our president would be. How do you feel about that?
That it could be a possibility, but again, if everyone is able to go out and vote at the end of the day, that is going to be reflected in the results. So, in my head right now, I think that could be an issue with the Electoral College. We have a certain number of people, we have a consensus, majority rule for an Electoral College vote on East Coast, West Coast, and that's what gets represented. However, with one person, one vote majority of the population, who they vote for, the people's choice, if you will, I feel like that is definitely more inclusive, more representative, and I don't believe that would be an issue for the popular vote, but I do think that could be an issue for the Electoral College.
Okay, great. Mateo, you support the college or popular vote?
Now, I will say this is one of the issues that me and Colby tend to disagree upon. So I am in favor of keeping the Electoral College. If you'd like to make some changes, I'll talk about those in a second. But the Electoral College was created in effort to stop mob rule from happening. That's basically why it was created. You didn't want one sector of the country making decisions for the rest of it. Because ultimately what's right for California is not right for Michigan. And the worry is, and I think it's a very, very apt worry, very good worry, is that places like California, which have 30 million people in it, places like New York, which have other millions of people in it, they're going to be deciding our elections. And that's why we need the Electoral College today, is because we're going to have presidents elected based on the values only a few areas of the country, when it should be a stronger amalgamation of everyone.
Do you really think there's the potential, and it is true, the founding fathers were very suspicious of, if you will, the common person, determining the outcome of the presidential election and so forth. But do you really think in this day and age we have to worry about a lot of uninformed individuals electing the president, and do we really have to worry about what you called mob rule in this day and age?
No, that is a very, very good question. And I believe that under our current political system, under the way our federal officers guide us, and under the way that, honestly, most modern news channels treat each other, they're raising the American people into two mobs that hate each other. And that's the unfortunate but true fact of the matter. So in terms of people sticking blindly to their beliefs, I think that's the reality. We're in a cold civil war. So mob rule by either side is a definite possibility.
Thank you. Carlos, Electoral College or direct popular vote? Which one do you favor?
It's a hard one. No, just kidding. I would stick with the Electoral College because I do believe that it is the most fair. I do understand Colby's point that, one vote should matter for the entirety of the country. You get one vote, that's who won, and that's how it would typically work if it were like American Idol or any other contest. Though I do understand Mateo's point, and which I do believe in, that each state should have their own representation. And so, again, it does become a game of strategy. And so, of course, you're not going to be liked by everybody. We see this with the two candidates right now. You should focus on the smaller states or the states that could possibly give you the win, as well as all states. But that's what really matters.
Thank you. Do we have another question?
We do. We have a few, actually. We have one that says, how do you think President Trump has handled Black Lives Matter?
Okay. It's a very delicate issue, of course, but I think we do need to discuss this. Colby, why don't you run with that to start with?
Definitely. All right. So I definitely have some words to say, some opinions, some thoughts about this. I'm going to start by saying that a lot of what President Trump has said in regards to Black Lives Matter has been on social media. That's something that, that everyone looks at. It's readily available for everyone. And I do believe that a majority of the things that he's been saying aren't probably the best way to phrase things or the best way to handle situations. This is a really difficult question because I do believe that Black Lives Matter is legitimate. I recognize it. I attended protests over quarantine. It's something that I, stand strongly with and that I support. And I do feel that it could have been a little bit more legitimized, a little bit more recognized by our incumbent president. And I feel like that is something that he did drop the ball, and he was kind of, dismissive, didn't really, I don't know if it was an understanding thing, he didn't understand it. I can't really speak for him on that regard because never met him, don't know him. However, definitely the way that he has portrayed his opinions and his views regarding the Black Lives Matter movement have, in my opinion, been very dismissive, very, he does not legitimize it, he won't recognize it, and just flat out probably doesn't support it. And, I can understand where he's coming from. He has not dealt with this issue, this type of situation before. So I get it. It's intimidating. It could be frightening. You don't know exactly what the right words to say are. However, I feel like, he should have had some, a little bit more common sense, a little bit more regard for other feelings and thoughts in people in the way that he chose to represent his feelings and what he was thinking in his words, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much. Mateo, how do you think President Trump has handled the Black Lives Matter movement?
So while I to a very, I would say, short extent, agree with Colby and agree with what you had to say. The way President Trump responded initially probably was too slow, and I think the initial Black Lives Matter protests that arose out of this situation were productive, and they could have led to great change. My issue currently, and I think the issue that President Trump has and how he's engaging with the issue currently, and will probably continue to engage with it up until Election Day, is that they have primarily devolved into riots in major cities. That is an undeniable fact of the matter. You look at the data, more than half of, I believe, you can fact check me on that, but many of these demonstrations have turned violent. You can see all across the news, and it's not just the news propagating a few incidences. These are many, many incidences where this has happened. And that's why President Trump has actually received a resurgence in the polls, is because people want to restore to order. They're seeing what's happening around the nation, and they're not happy about it. If you let people riot and destroy businesses and shoot cops, people aren't going to stand for that. President Trump is taking his cue as a president now and enforcing that. And I'm not saying that he has not been in opposition to black people. I think the actual riots have been opposition to many African Americans. Look at the cop they shot a few months ago, trying to guard a store. He was an off-duty cop, and they shot him dead in the street. Black businesses burned down in the name of chaos. So yes, I do think that the initial protests were good, and he should have had more support in them. However, the way they devolved, we need a stronger hand. Also, I want to say this. Senator Tim Scott put forth a bill. It was not heard of. People ignored him. He was a Republican. This is not a Republican-Democrat issue. We need to come together on this. And no one's to blame here. I want to point that out. Republicans and Democrats each have their own issues, each have their own stubbornness that blocks change and blocks progress here.
And why don't you tell us who Senator Tim Scott is?
Senator Tim Scott is a senator from South Carolina. He is an African-American Republican, and he put forth a bill in effort to try to qualm some of the issues that have risen up in regard to Black Lives Matter. And they were basically unheard. So that's my thoughts on the issue.
Thank you. Carlos, how has President Trump been responding to Black Lives Matter? What's your view on it?
I would say not the best. I believe that there should have been, again, a little bit more support. And, when people are angry, people are going to show that in different ways. And if that's unfortunate that stuff has gone on, then, it was time. A lot of people have faced a lot of discrimination and have felt, the need. And I think that overall, this, again, is a very new subject for all. This is something that we all have to change. We all have to reevaluate everything. We've all have had, it's time to really understand where people are coming from and that change is necessary and it's important. And I believe that it's something that, again, his problem with my specific problem is that he takes everything to social media. And sometimes that's not the best way to handle things, especially as the President of the United States or any position. Social media is never the answer, and I believe that that's what causes for a lot of these divisive arguments and for a lot of these issues that are going on, because now it essentially creates a platform for then other people to run with it, go with it, and then take it in their own way. And so that's the biggest problem, is that if he would have handled it just like a president, then maybe it would be different.
Thank you.
We got a great question.
Okay,
And
sure.
I think it'll apply to everybody.
Okay.
Overall, how has Constitution Day motivated you in any way as we approach the 2020 presidential election?
Okay, that's a great question. Wonderful question. Let me just say one thing, that, it's our Constitution, which has allowed for freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, freedom of press, and it's our Constitution that protects the rights of political parties to engage in what we're discussing here today. So Constitution Day is very dear to me, not just because of the electoral dimensions of it that we're celebrating today or discussing today, but Constitution Day means an awful lot to me because the Constitution, I believe, has kept this country really free. And the Declaration of Independence embraces the ideals of our country, but it's the Constitution that really has embraced those ideals and have made them a reality. So this Constitution, to me, is precious. It is precious, and I'm always honored to be the host of Constitution Day. Mateo, what does Constitution Day mean to you?
Yeah, so Constitution Day is important. I would put the ratification and the authorization of the Constitution as simply one of the greatest human achievements. And I really do believe that. And the reason why I believe that is because when the Founding Fathers set out actually crafting what this country would be, there were so many opinions. There were so many thoughts, so many beliefs, people who went on for hours about ideas that never got put in. There was so much passion. And yet they were able, at the end of the day, to carve out something they could all agree on, and they all felt proud writing their names on and saying, I helped make this. Even if I don't agree with it 100%, I give it my stamp of approval. And obviously, I'm a very passionate person about politics. I'm sure you've all seen that so far. And Colby's also a passionate person, so is Carlos. And while we all have our passions, and while we all believe strongly what we believe, I believe that week at the end of the day could iron out solutions to a lot of the problems in this country. Everyone could. Anyone could. And that precedent is set in the Constitution. That's our legacy as a nation.
Thank you. Colby, Constitution Day, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, definitely. I first want to say that, Mateo, I love your point about saying, although you don't 100% agree with it, you have faith in it and you know that it's going to work. You know that it's in the best interest and the best thing for our country. And that's a point that I really like, and I would like to jump off of that. The Constitution really crafted our nation, and it really, set us into motion. We gained our independence from Great Britain, then we were able to form from the literal ground up. And like you were saying, Mateo, so many different ideas, so many opinions were just put into this Constitution, and it's really an embodiment of who we are today, no matter which way you want to look at it. We all come from different backgrounds. We all have different opinions and different things to say. However, for the most part, the goal is to come together to find solutions and to do things with the best interest of, the American people in mind. And, Constitution Day, in terms of the 2020 election that's coming up, it really does motivate me to want to go out and vote, because our founding fathers 200 something years ago, on this day, were able to come together to form our Constitution that was able to solidify and protect our right and our privilege and our freedom to vote for, our elected officials in this country. And it's something that not many people really think about on a daily basis, but it's definitely is a privilege for us to vote, and that's why I do encourage everyone to go out on November 3rd, 2020, or to go out and vote.
Carlos, what does Constitution Day mean to you?
It's super important. I do want to state that even though when this was started, when this Constitution was written, not all people were free. But though over time, all people of all backgrounds were able to get their rights and are able to participate in the election, and that's why it's important to vote, but have also been able to enjoy the freedoms that we do have. Fortunate for me, my parents are both naturalized U.S. citizens. They weren't originally from the United States, and they're able to participate in the election, as well as my sister who recently became a U.S. citizen, also being able to participate in the election, and me being an American-born, first American here. It means a lot to be able to enjoy those freedoms and be able to use my voice.
Wonderful, thank you. Can I just ask a brief question, and this will be the last question I'll ask of the evening, and then we can bring closure to it. And we can start with Colby, and we'll go to Mateo and back to Carlos. Do Americans take their rights for granted?
Wow, okay, that is an interesting question. I don't know if they necessarily take them for granted, but maybe, they kind of forget how fortunate we are to be Americans and how better off we are than some other countries around the world. I'm going to use, voting, the privilege of voting. That is something that not every single human in the world has the right to do. Not everyone has the power and, that right, that privilege, that freedom to vote for their elected officials, to vote for the leaders of their country, for their states, for their local communities. That's something that not everyone around the world has the right to do. And I definitely, when I have conversations with people, whether it's my family, my friends, people that I come in contact with at work or at school or anything like that, I always, encourage and foster that ability to vote, because some people take it. I think some people actually do take that for granted, because they say, "Oh, why is it important? Why do I need to do this? Does my vote even matter?" And the answer is yes, it does matter, and you should exercise your right. That is a right. That is a privilege. That is a freedom that you have, and I do feel very strongly about that. So again, go out and vote, everyone.
Thank you. Mateo, what do you think? Do the people take their rights for granted in this country?
I think that to an extent I would agree with Colby that they do. And I want to remind everyone watching this, the rights that you have are yours because you are alive. You are a person. You, for some reason, are here. The government doesn't give them to you. They're yours. The Constitution just protects them. But it's your ability. It's your duty to carry it on in the future. What Colby is saying, you have to go vote. The whole point of having a constitution is to be a shield against the evils of the world that are going to try to take your rights away from you. But they can only actually do it if you let them, if we let them. Because God knows we have all taken our rights for granted at some point or another. Taken it for the fact that people have died for what we laugh at, what we forget. So what I ask of myself every day and what I'm asking of everyone in this audience, remember, just take some time. The people who wrote this Constitution, people who signed the Declaration of Independence, they signed that knowing that if they were wrong and if they failed, they would be hanged. Don't waste your chance.
Thank you. Carlos, last word. Do we take our rights for granted?
I do. I do believe so. When we first started with Pioneer Vote, there was a lot of, especially coming from younger voters, oh, why should I vote? Or I don't believe this to be true. I don't agree. But again, we're able to make such a significant change, and we all have our own opinions. So I do believe that sometimes we forget that we have this privilege, and unfortunately some people, around, as mentioned, do not have the privilege at all to choose what they want to do, if they can do something or to not do something. And again, at the end of the day, voting is your right, something that can be taken away, and something that will 100% make a difference in the long time, short time, in all aspects of time.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our forum this evening. I want to thank the three of you, really, for participating and for offering such substantive and thoughtful commentary on the election and now the Constitution as well. I'm very pleased with this discussion and the quality of your reflection and the depth of your answers, too. Very impressive. I think you're great representatives of the student body, and your clubs on campus are so important, not just for this election, but for many other elections to come. And I think the three of you really have established outstanding foundations for future political activity on the campus of Sacred Heart University. So thank you very much for participating. And on that note, I will say to our audience, thank you for tuning in. And thank you for your questions. I hope you found tonight's forum as informative as I have. And it's been a real honor to be with these fine students tonight. And thank you to Jason Ebert and Unal as well for producing this. Thank you, folks.
Thank you for joining tonight's conversation. To learn more, visit sacredheart.edu.